So we're going to do photosynthesis. And I'm not going to go so much detail compared to what I do with cellular respiration, but I still got to do some on here. Today what I wanted, my goal is to do the first 30 slides or so, which is really just an overview of photosynthesis, explain what the heck does it mean by taking light energy or just sunlight and turning it into energy. How does that work? What is it that's going on with that? And then just explain the two, very briefly, there's two processes that we need to know. It's called light reactions and old school they call it dark reactions. But I'll show you that. It's called Calvin's cycle. Just an overview. That leaves with the more details about it for Monday. Okay. Now let's talk about photosynthesis. All right. All right. Photosynthesis. Right. All mass sunlight again. You know. You get it. All right. So here's an overview of the plant anatomy. Okay. Photosynthesis is converting sunlight, solar energy, and turning it into chemical energy. How does that happen? How does heat do that? Now, you could also be thinking about solar panels, right? It works the same way. Well, maybe not the same way, but it's taking sunlight and turning it into energy that you can use. Okay? So directly or indirectly, this nourishes almost the entire planet. Right? We start off, we look at the food chain, right? So we got plants that are making their own food with the sunlight, and then it's giving off the oxygen that we're using, and we can eat the plants and so forth. Okay? So this occurs in, photosynthesis occurs in plants, algae, certain protists, and some prokaryotes also. All right? Autotrophs. These are the producers of the biosphere. These are the ones that are going to make, these are the lowest of the lowest kind of thing, right? It's going to be the ones that are making the energy, are making the food. So they make organic molecules from carbon dioxide and inorganic molecules. We have photoautotrophs, and those are the ones that are specifically going to take sunlight and make organic molecules from water and carbon dioxide. So being able to change these. Heterotrophs, that's what we are, consumers of the biosphere. We're going to be taking those plants and eating them. All right? If we don't have sunlight, you can't make plants, which means that we're going to die off. So we make organic molecules from other organisms. Remember, plant is an organism. Just don't think of organisms just being something with arms and legs. Okay? So we eat the plants, we eat animals too. All right? And heterotrophs rely on photoautotrophs for food and carbon dioxide, food and oxygen. I once told someone, and it's the truth, I once was a vegetarian, not because I love animals, but because I hate plants. So anyway, what you got over here is that you have sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. The plant is going to take these three things and be able to make sugar and oxygen. Okay? So you're taking carbon dioxide and water and making it into glucose and oxygen. You've seen that before, but the opposite, right? We take glucose and oxygen, and then we make water and carbon dioxide and energy, right? So photosynthesis is the opposite of cellular respiration. It's the same formula, just different mechanism to get there. Okay? So it's the opposite of cellular respiration. That's why if you understand cellular respiration, photosynthesis is going to be somewhat easy. That's why by Sunday you should have cellular respiration under your belt to make photosynthesis. Now, the way photosynthesis works is a little bit of detail, but I'm not going to go into much detail that I compared to with cellular respiration. So the internal leaflet structure, we have an epidermis. The epidermis is the protective layer that's fairly transparent, and it's the upper and lower portions of the of the leaf. So you look at a leaf, the upper portion is an epidermis, and you got the underlying portion. In the middle, in between, sandwiched between those two layers, you have something called the mesophyll cells, and that's the part that's going to contain the chloroplasts that are going to be the site of photosynthesis. But we also have veins in there too, and the veins are going to be the areas that are going to transport minerals, sugars, and water. Okay? We also have stoma. They're like these little mouths. All right, you can't see them on a microscopic level, and you'll see it. You'll see it's spelled stoma or stomata. That stomata just means it's in plural, whereas this is one stoma or four stomata. That's what that is. But those are little openings. When they're open, oxygen can exit through here, and carbon dioxide could enter it. Okay, I'll show you what that looks like. So here's the epidermis, right? So here's the epidermis up here, there's an epidermis down here. The mesophyll cells are all in between here that have the chloroplasts. You can see all the many different veins in there. So it's like sandwiched in between there. The stoma is going to be found underneath here, and they open and close, allowing things to come in. Right? So here's the stoma that actually are open, and then here they are where they're closed. Okay? You have to see it under a microscope. This is a mesophyll cell, and you can see all those wonderful areas, those dark green areas having all those chloroplasts. I think you've seen those. There's about 30 chloroplasts or so in every mesophyll cell. So chloroplasts found in plants and algae. We talked about this before, what it is, but the site of photosynthesis captures the light energy, converts it into chemical energy. But the thing is, we make the sugar from the carbon dioxide and water. It's a type of plastid, which is an organelle that makes and stores pigments, and we'll talk about pigments in a moment, but that's where you get the fruit color, the flower color, it's all that. It has a double membrane, right, just the way the cell wall is, just the way the mitochondria is, right, it has two phospholipid bilayers. It has its own DNA, just like the mitochondria does, and contains chlorophyll, which is the green pigment, okay? A lot of different enzymes in there we're going to talk about on Monday that are going to help to function in photosynthesis. Okay? So just as a review, this is a chloroplast. And you have these stacks of green pancakes. Each pancake is actually called a thylakoid. Okay? When you have a stack of them, then we call it a granule. And they're all interconnected. They're all in here, inside the chloroplast, and the open space that's all surrounding it, that's called the stroma. So we're going to be talking about the thylakoids, we're going to talk about the stroma as much as we talk about in the mitochondria. We had the matrix and we had an intermembrane space. Well, we're going to be talking about inside the thylakoids and outside the thylakoids, that's called the stroma. So you'll get to see that too. All right, so let's talk about light energy. What is this all about? How is that getting changed into energy that the plants can use? Okay? Well, light energy, we have something called electromagnetic radiation, which is a form of energy. Okay? So the light energy, the sunlight, is electromagnetic radiation. You hear that? That's the sunlight. Okay? So it acts as two things, light energy. It's wave-like. So it has, when you have this radiation, it's going to be going, so a light isn't just going like that, it kind of goes like that. It's wave-like. Okay? And a wavelength is going from this is called a trough, and this is a crest. And when we go from crest to crest, that is called a wavelength. We could have a very long wavelength, so from here to here, see that's a long wavelength, or we could have a short wavelength. And that determines if you can see it or not, those wavelengths. It tells you how much energy that actually can have. Okay? We could also have it act like a particle. Okay? So they're actually particles that each wavelength, each sunlight, it's like a, well, it's called a photon. I call my daughter a photon. She's a little bundle of energy. But that's what that is. It's a bundle of energy that forms in a wave-like format. All right? So we see it as a particle, but you could also see it as a wave. So you've got to look at it like that. So we have this electromagnetic spectrum. All right? It displays a range of different wavelengths. You can see that there could be short ones, there could be long ones. And I'm not talking about just the sunlight. You have X-rays, you've got radio waves, you've got microwaves, you've got all these kinds of waves. Certain waves you can see. It's called visible light. You can see it. But most, and that's just a small fraction of what you can see. The rest of the waves you just can't see. You can't see if there's, microwaves in the room or X-rays. So you can't see that. Okay? So visible light is that small portion that humans can see. And this is the part that's actually going to drive photosynthesis. Okay? Each photon wavelength has a specific amount of energy it gives off. All right? Shorter wavelengths have more energy. Longer wavelengths have less energy. Okay? So when you're looking at this little spectrum here, gamma rays, X-rays, UV, ultraviolet light, infrared rays, microwaves, radio waves. And what's happening here is that when we go this way, the wavelengths between the crests are longer. They have longer wavelengths. So radio waves are very long wavelengths, whereas gamma rays very short. There's more energy here. There's less energy given off over here. Okay? And this is also trying to show you where the visible light is. This is the only rays that we can actually see. Okay? So the shorter the wavelength, the more energy it actually has. All right? You put gamma rays or X-rays and, it'll zap you. All right? Radio waves. If you be next to a radio, it's not going to do much. Okay? Who here has heard of Roy G. Biv? 1, 2, 3. There we go. You got all these. Roy G. Biv doesn't exist. It's just a mnemonic. And all it is it tells you the spectrum of visible light, our color spectrum, going from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Indigo is probably a new one to you, but you could imagine where it is on the spectrum. You should know this one. This is an easy one to know. What's that? Yeah, that's it. These are the colors. If you look next time you look at a rainbow, if you really study it or take a picture of it, this is the same way a rainbow is also. Okay? So we're looking at long wavelengths over here, short wavelengths over here. So it's really, you read it backwards if you're going from long to short. All right? But it follows that mnemonic on there. All right, so let's talk about pigments. Pigments, this is what absorbs visible light. That's what pigments do. Dyes and stuff. They absorb visible light. You can see things. Okay? Well, you can't see them if they get absorbed, but if they get reflected, you can see them. So different pigments absorb different wavelengths. All right? If it gets absorbed, you can't see it. If it gets reflected, you'll be able to see it. And that's what's going to make the difference. That's why we can see trees being green or the leaves being green. Leaves appear green because chlorophyll, which is a pigment, reflects and transmits green light. It absorbs all the other different colors, but it doesn't absorb green. Okay? So, if you want to look at a cartoon picture light comes in and it absorbs all the different colors except for green. So green gets reflected, and that's what we see. Why is it that, in the fall we see yellows and we see reds and stuff? Okay. Chlorophyll, okay? Before we get into that, chlorophyll, when a pigment absorbs light, it goes from a ground state, a stable state, to a more excited state. All right? So excited state is an unstable state. It wants to become stable. It feels like that little, tickle in your nose, right? It's getting excited. It's tickling in your nose. You want to burst and just sneeze, right? So your nose is unstable. It's getting excited, right? It wants to sneeze. We have something called fluorescence, and that's when excited electrons fall back to the ground state. When that happens, the photons get released. And these photons have this afterglow. Try to look for something like fluorescence that you can see. But it's fluorescent lights, right? That kind of glow that you have on, right? So illumination causes the chlorophyll to produce this fluorescence, and that means light and heat is released. All right? This is an excited state. Okay? So, what it's just showing you here is that if there's a lot of light that goes onto the sunlight, that goes onto the chlorophyll, it's going to go in an excited state. It's going to excite the electrons there, which means that it's going to release energy. It has a lot of power there. Okay? So we've only mentioned chlorophyll, but there's other pigments in the leaves. The chlorophyll, we have chlorophyll A and there's chlorophyll B. Most of it's chlorophyll A. Chlorophyll A is the main light-capturing pigment, and it absorbs violet, blue, and red, but it reflects green. So green light, that's why leaves appear green. We also have chlorophyll B, and that absorbs blue and red light that's missed by the chlorophyll A. So that's why they kind of work together. But chlorophyll A is the more common one, it's the more main one. But we also have something called carotenoids, and this absorbs blue and green light. Now this is the key thing here, why leaves turn colors. It absorbs excessive light that would damage chlorophyll. Now, I'm going to get back to that in a moment. Okay? But what happens here, it appears yellow or orange because it absorbs only the blue and green. So therefore, the yellow and orange would appear. But because we have a lot more chlorophyll A, it appears green, it doesn't appear orange. You know where I'm going with this. But the other thing is that it absorbs excessive light that would damage the chlorophyll. So it's like a protective measure. Do you know there's a lot of plants that do have these carotenoids? Carrots is a good example of that. And carrots are good for your eyes. It's going to cut down on the amount of light that's coming into your eyes. You've heard of that, right? Carrots help with eyes. In essence, that's what's happening. There's a lot of other vegetables that do have carotenoids also. But that's where that comes in. It has a protective measure. So the carotenoids absorb blue and green, but they reflect yellow and orange. So it's a busy slide. What I'm trying to show you on here is that if they absorb, this is the amount of absorption going on, all right? So let's just look at chlorophyll A, okay? Chlorophyll A, if it's the green graph up here, if it's very high, it absorbs those colors. So it's absorbing purples, it's absorbing blues. But when you get to the green, it's like zero. It's right down at the bottom. It's reflecting the green color. It's not absorbing it. Then when you get into yellows, it starts creeping up. It starts absorbing, and even the orange is very hot. So this is showing that chlorophyll A reflects green but absorbs everything else. But look at the carotenoids. All right? It's actually absorbing all the colors, the orange one here, right? All the colors that are high, but down here, it doesn't absorb yellow. It doesn't even show anything there because it's like 0. So it doesn't absorb yellows, doesn't absorb oranges and reds. So those will reflect, and that's where you can see those colors. So that's what I want to say about here, that's what's happening. It absorbs those colors on there. All right? So in autumn, what happens is that more green chlorophyll breaks down before carotenoids do. It gets colder. So the chlorophyll breaks down, and the carotenoids are the only ones there. They're the ones that are going to reflect the oranges and the yellows, whereas the green ones that get reflected, they're going to get thrown out. They get destroyed first. Okay? And that's why you get these yellows and oranges and reds in the autumn. Alright, so all I want to do very briefly is just give you an overview of the photosynthesis, and then we'll just cut up over there. Probably take about like 10 minutes to do it. Okay? And I don't know, fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know. I'm not going to draw the big maps. I'm going to call them maps. The big maps for photosynthesis up on the board. It's difficult to do that as much as it was fairly easy to do for cell respiration. So there isn't going to be much of my art therapy up on the board today. Photosynthesis, there's two sets of reactions going on. You take that word photosynthesis, those two reactions are based, well, the two parts of the word are based on those two reactions. The word photo refers to light reactions. Reactions that are coming from the sunlight, right? They're going to change that sunlight into chemical energy. They're going to change the solar energy into chemical energy. And that's what this part would do, okay? The chlorophyll and thylakoids and the membranes over there will capture that sunlight and change that sunlight into ATP and something. In this case, with photosynthesis, we don't have NADH, we have something called NADPH, which in our purpose is basically going to be electron carrier, just the way NADH is. We don't have to worry about what the structure looks like. All right, so just understand for photosynthesis, pretty easy mnemonic, the P is in there. Okay? But we don't have that with cellular respiration. And there is no FADH2 in photosynthesis. So the other part of photosynthesis is the synthesis, and what it is basically it's something where this guy, last name Calvin, came up with, and it's called the Calvin cycle. And basically what's happening here is that this reaction here is making ATP and NADPH, which would be transferred into, or converted into ATP. They're going to use the ATP, and they're going to put it into the second reaction. So we've got to make the energy, and then the energy needs to be put into this to make glucose. Okay? So the Calvin cycle, God bless you, uses enzymes in the stroma, not the thylakoid, the stroma. And this is where carbon dioxide that we breathe out, this is where the plants actually use it, the carbon dioxide, mix it with the chemical energy that came from this reaction to make these 3 carbon sugars that we use to make carbon dioxide, or that can make glucose or sucrose, whatever you want to make, whatever kind of sugar you want to make. Okay? So we're breaking up into 2 things. The first part is light reactions, and this is where we're going to take the sun's energy, convert it to chemical energy, which is ATP, We're then going to use the ATP, and it's going to run the Calvin cycle to make sugar. So keep in mind, what we're doing here is that in animals, in our cells, we can't do that. We can't make glucose. So we have to get glucose from the foods that you're eating. Plants, however, have to go through 2 steps and make their own sugar. Then you've got the glucose, and you've got the oxygen, and that will go into the mitochondria of the plant to make ATP for the rest of the cells. Does that make sense what we're doing here? It's a little confusing. Okay, let me just repeat that. In animals, we don't make glucose. We need to get glucose from the foods that we eat. And we don't use sunlight, obviously. I don't shine if the sun comes on me, and I don't get bigger because, just the sunlight. But plants, they need to make their glucose. They're going to take sunlight energy, turn it into chemical energy, ATP, that will be used to run the second part of this photosynthesis. That is going to, the ATP will be used to, and combined with carbon dioxide, and it's going to make sugars. Now this sugar in plants could be utilized to go through cellular respiration so that it makes ATP for the rest of the cell. So the ATP that's being made here is only to make glucose. Does that make sense? All right, a little confusing. We have this extra step here. All right, so what's happening here? Photosynthesis. Water and sunlight are going to go into light reactions. And the light reactions are going to make ATP in this NADPH. Oxygen is going to be the byproduct of this, and that's what we use as humans. We breathe that. In animals, we breathe the oxygen that that photosynthesis in the plants do. So the oxygen comes out of the first reaction, which is the light reactions. Then this makes ATP. NADPH, that gets converted to ATP. So what's going to happen here, this ATP is then going to run the second thing, which happens in the stroma, not the thylakoids. And this is where ATP and carbon dioxide from the air that we're breathing out goes into this Calvin cycle. And from there, it's going to spit out sugar. Now this sugar is going to go out. Now keep in mind, this whole thing here is a chloroplast. So now this sugar goes out into cytoplasm and goes to a mitochondria. And then the mitochondria is going to take that and oxygen and go through what you've just been learning about, cellular respiration. Okay? A little bit more here. It'd be great if we could do this. Be self-contained. We don't need to go out and eat food. But sunlight doesn't work on it. So, we now have to go and talk about what are the light reactions, what is the Calvin cycle all about? And that's what we're going to do today. Who here has heard of Roy G. Biv? 1, 2, 3. There we go. Roy G. biv doesn't exist. It's just a mnemonic. And all it is it tells you the spectrum of visible light, our color spectrum, going from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Indigo is probably a new one to you, but you could imagine where it is on the spectrum. You should know this one. This is an easy one to know. What's that? Yeah, this is the colors. If you look, next time you look at a rainbow, if you really study it or take a picture of it, this is the same way a rainbow is also. Okay? So we're looking at long wavelengths over here, short wavelengths over here. So it's really, you read it backwards if you're going from long to short. All right? But it follows that mnemonic on there. All right, so let's talk about pigments, and we'll get back to Roy G. Biv in a second. So pigments is something that's going to absorb light. Pigments are going to do that. It's going to absorb visible light. And different pigments, depending on which ones they are, absorb different wavelengths. As you can see, there's blues and purples, they have shorter wavelengths. And then we have oranges and reds, they have longer wavelengths. So certain pigments are going to absorb the wavelengths that are longer or shorter, depending on what there is. So yes, when we talk about plants, they're going to have a lot of different pigments in there. And that's why you get all those brilliant and diverse colors in plants and flowers and fruits. So the wavelengths are reflected or transmitted if it's not absorbed. This is a key thing here. If it absorbs a certain light, you're not going to see it because it's in the plant, it absorbed it. If it doesn't absorb a certain color, it gets reflected back, and that's what you see. So leaves appear green because chlorophyll, which is the pigment, absorbs all the colors except for green. So the green gets reflected back, and that's what you see. The pigments in here absorb everything except for blue. That's why you see this as blue. Likewise, orange. All right? People are colorblind. We'll learn that in A&P 1. Okay? But that's the concept over here. So again, you have your chloroplast. Light comes in, it's going to absorb all the colors except for green. Green reflects back. And that's why we see plants, most plants, as green. So chlorophyll, when a pigment absorbs light, it goes from what we call a ground state to an excited state. So when it absorbs light, it gets excited. When it gets excited, we're talking about that it's unstable. It releases energy. But then it goes right back down to the ground state. So fluorescence is when excited electrons fall back to that ground state. Photons, energy, gets released when it does this. And it needs to reset, so to say. And the photons give this afterglow. So we have illumination will lead to chlorophyll to fluoresce, and the light and heat gets released. So the chlorophyll is an important thing. It's what's going to get some kind of energy. How? Well, that's what we got to get into the light reaction for. So as the sunlight comes into the chlorophyll, that excites the electrons, makes it unstable, but eventually it caps off, and then it needs to go right back down to the ground level, releasing heat, releasing energy. And then it happens again and again. So we have pigments in leaves. It's not just chlorophyll, but we got chlorophyll A and B. Chlorophyll A is is the main one that's going to capture, going to absorb mainly the violet, blue, and red light. It's kind of a weird thing. It does stuff from one end of the spectrum and also the other end, but not in the middle. Green light is reflected, and that's why leaves appear green. It absorbs all the other colors. We also have chlorophyll B that absorbs the blue and red-orange that the chlorophyll A somehow missed. We also have carotenoids, and these are actually going to just absorb the blue and the green, leaving, and we'll get back to this one, leaving the oranges and yellows reflected back. It's the carotenoids that give the carrots the orange color, that give the apples the red color, because that gets reflected back, and that's what we see. The experiment we're doing tomorrow is going to be based on this. So see, make sure you're paying attention here. This is the amount of light that gets absorbed into those pigments. Here's the wavelength. And again, it would help if you know Roy G. Biv going this way. What this is showing is the different pigments that are found in the chloroplasts. Chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and carotenoids. Okay? If you see these graphs going up, that's saying that it's being absorbed. That color, this purple and blue, are getting absorbed by the chlorophyll, the green line here, is being absorbed by chlorophyll A. So just follow the green line here. The green line is showing that these are all being absorbed, these are all being absorbed. These two are being absorbed. But look at this. When we get to the green area, none of it gets absorbed. Some of the yellow over here, gradually to oranges and stuff, it gets absorbed. But here, it does not get absorbed. You see that? When you look at the carotenoids, we're seeing the orange over here. We're seeing over here, all this is going to get absorbed. But when we get down to about yellow, nothing gets absorbed. So therefore, the yellows and the oranges and the reds, they reflect back due to the carotenoids. And then we see that as that color. Understanding that? That's tomorrow's lab. So then how do you explain autumn? Okay, what happens here is that they go through a process of hibernation, so to say. They decrease the amount of energy and food they need to make during the winter. Again, there are some exceptions, evergreens, Christmas trees, and so forth, yes, but we're not going to get into that. But what happens here is that when they go through and use less absorptions, the chlorophyll A and the chlorophyll B, those actually break down faster than the carotenoids. That leaves the carotenoids the only ones that are functioning. And like I showed you before, carotenoids absorb everything except for the oranges, yellows, and reds, which is why you get all those colors in the autumn. Does that make sense? You guys are just so thrilled. You're just thinking about raking leaves. You're not looking at the beauty of it, right? All right? Does that make sense, though? All right. What questions do I have at this point? I'm curing your insomnia, right? Plan. All right. Now let's get into equally fascinating stuff, right? Photosynthesis. What I just explained to you is basically the light reaction is going to take in this solar energy and make it chemical energy. That's what this whole absorption, chlorophyll and chloroplast, what that's doing. Now we understand that. Now let's go to the next step.
I have a question.
Sure.
So does that happen only in the
chloroplast is only in the plant and algae and certain protists that have to make their own food. Not in us, obviously. But yes, it happens in the leaves. There was a question on your lab report about do onions have, if you've done that one, do onions have chlorophyll or chloroplast? Yes and no. The onions don't. They're white. They don't have the chlorophyll in there. Onions are underground. It doesn't take in any energy. But it's still a plant. So how does that happen? Well, there's outside of the, the bulb is the onion. But the onion has the leaves coming out of the ground. That's where it's getting all the energy from the sun. So the onions themselves don't have chloroplast and chlorophyll, but they have to have some kind of sunlight coming in. They're using other parts of the onion plant to do that.
So I was thinking about the
The carotenoid? Oh, the carrot?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. The carrot is in underground, but the leaves, right, the stems that come out, that's all green. That's the part that's going to be accepting, the light from the sun. Does that make sense? There has to. You're not going to have a plant just in the ground and getting sunlight. I can't think of, no, you can't. You've got to have the sunlight come somehow into the plant to create photosynthesis, to do photosynthesis. Okay? Other questions? Okay, so photosynthesis. Again, I'm emphasizing there's two reactions that happen here. Photosynthesis is well, we could break down the word. Photo refers to light reactions. Okay? This is where the chlorophyll is going to absorb that light to change it into energy so that we can make some energy to go to part 2 of our photosynthesis procedure. The synthesis, in Latin or Greek, that means to generate. And that's going to refer to the Calvin cycle. It's going to generate, it's going to make, synthesize glucose. So photosynthesis is done by 2 reactions. Okay? We got to do the light reaction to create energy to run the Calvin cycle to make glucose, to make an absorbent amount of energy to sustain the plants. And this energy can be stored in the plant, and we can eat the plant and convert that energy to us, or transfer that energy to us. So, an overview of what's happening here. This is a chloroplast. Light comes in to our granums. Water comes in here too, by way of those veins. It's coming from the soil. ADP, and here's a new one, NADP. Now we don't have that over here. We have NAD+, right? This has NADP+. It's a different thing. Don't go into what the structure looks like, but plants use NADP. And if we add a hydrogen to it, then it's NADPH. Very similar to our NADH. Okay? Sounds like medical alphabet here, right?
Oh, a question over there. So when it gets into the cycle part, like the citric cycle part?
That's not happening in here. Citric acid cycle is happening in the mitochondria. Totally different.
Right, I'm
place.
saying when it gets that, like on us, it creates the NADHP.
Mm-hmm.
Will that be?
No,
in
this
that
is
cycle?
only used in photosynthesis, and we don't do photosynthesis.
No, I'm saying, but in the plant, when it gets the citric cycle, does it still make the P?
Oh, no. They go through cellular respiration the same way we do. So they make NADH here, they make FADH2 over here. Okay? This is the same thing in animals and plants. The only thing different is photosynthesis, and that's what I'm trying to teach here. I'm not going to go again and teach you the cellular respiration. I'm assuming you have questions. I can stay after class again today. If questions on that. but this is what I'm kind of emphasizing, an NADPH is going to only involve here, it never gets involved in the cellular respiration. Correct. Okay, good question. Other questions? Okay. So our chloroplast, we're going to have this granum over here that's going to take light and water, put it into here. We're going to do this, and ATP comes out. In addition, oxygen comes out, and that's where we get that delicious oxygen that we breathe. If there is no more light reactions, we are not going to get oxygen. This makes ATP, and now it takes a reduced form. Again, why we call it reduced is because if this is NADP plus, if you add an electron, which is negative, this becomes neutral. So the charge goes from a positive to a neutral. We're reducing the charge. That's why we say that this is the reduced form. Okay? Try not to memorize. Understand the concept. And that's less for you to study. Okay? So this is going to make ATP, and it's going to make NADPH, which is going to be enough energy to enter the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle is the one that is going to take carbon dioxide and fix it, and we'll get into it. It's going to make glucose. It needs ATP and NADPH to run that. When it goes through that, the NADPH is going to get oxidized, the opposite of reduction, back to NADP, and that gets fueled into the light reactions again. With the Calvin cycle, one of the major things it does, it's going to make sugar, the glucose, that we need for cellular respiration in plants. So that's the overview. We're going to now spend some time talking about this. I don't know if we'll get in time to talk about that today. All right? So let's talk about what we call the light-dependent reactions. The light reactions. This is the light reaction. It's also referred to the light-dependent reaction because it depends on light. Light's coming in here, right, from the sun. This then would be referred to as the light-independent reaction because it doesn't rely on the light. Does that make sense? Okay? So the light-dependent reaction. There's photosystems in there. This is going to be very similar to our, well, it is basically the same as our electron transport chain that we saw, but different molecules and the hydrogens go in a different direction. So we have a photosystem, and they're all located in the membrane of the thylakoid. If you remember those green pancakes, it's in the wall of that pancake. Okay, and it's made up of MUO is made up of proteins and chlorophyll. So each photosystem contains two parts. Now this photosystem is, as the name implies, light. It's going to funnel the light from the outside and put it into something that we could change into energy. So a photosystem is going to capture this light. And it has two parts. And I'll show you a picture of this so you can see it. But basically, you're going to have a reaction center complex, something that kind of looks like this. And that's the part where the reaction is going to happen. That's where chlorophyll is actually located, at least chlorophyll A. Okay? And this is the part where it's going to actually do the activity of changing that sunlight into chemical energy. But we need to make sure it funnels in to here. So we have other cells that are all kind of located around here. And you got to think of a three-dimensional thing where if this is the reaction center complex, there's going to be something surrounding all this. In fact, those are called the light harvesting complexes. All they're trying to do is to make sure that the light comes in, it's going to funnel into the center over here. So this is basically what it looks like.